for December 7th, our agenda prep. I have 7 members present, and we will dispense with public forum. I've not had any submitted to me for presentation at public forum. So we'll move on to item 3, election of officers. And I would entertain a motion to keep the same officers we have that we elected in June, and then have another election in June of 2021. So if anybody could make a motion for that, I'd appreciate it.
Ms. Cantu?
Yes, Mr. Redondo.
Yeah, I move that the board elect Ms. Cantu to serve as board president, Mr. McLaughlin to serve as vice president, and Trustee Hansen to serve as secretary.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Ms. Villalpando seconds the motion. All in favor, show by raising your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Kathy, do you vote? Kathy?
She's having trouble hearing, so I'm gonna have to call her real quick. I'm gonna
Okay.
mute myself so y'all don't hear my conversation.
Any opposed? None opposed. So right now it's 6. I did not see Kathy's hand go up. So if somebody can communicate with her and let me know before we proceed to the next item.
Mr. Hubenak is calling her to see if he can help her with her technology issues.
Okay. Can he tell her to raise her hand? So we can have a vote? No, she's gone.
Can somebody ask her in the chat if she's voting in favor of that slate?
Kathy, are you in favor of the slate remaining? I guess she
I don't think she can hear us.
at all. Well, shall we proceed 6 and 0 against and one that can't hear? So we
I
can
know some people have to get to work, Ms. Cantu, so if we have to,
go on.
Ms. Cantu?
Yes,
I can't vote on her behalf, but I will say that she had indicated that was her preference before.
okay.
I thought you said,
Ms. Villalpando?
did you say 6, 4, and 0 again? I mean,
We have 6 voted for. Kathy can't hear, and all we're asking for her is
okay.
acknowledge.
I
And
thought I
Mr.
heard it again
Mr.
somewhere in there.
Mr. McLaughlin says he had talked to her and that she was in favor. So I don't know if that's legal to do that.
No, and it's not. I'm not voting like as a proxy. I had just
Okay.
communicated with her earlier and she had indicated that was her preference. So I think it's fine to move on. She wouldn't be
Okay.
opposed. I'm sure us moving on to June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Halsey, I didn't hear you.
We've asked her in the chat, so hopefully she'll respond there and we can correct the record.
Okay. Let's move on. We now have a closed session. We've moved up the closed session so that anybody has to get back to work. We won't run long and they won't be gone from their job too much. So let's move on to the closed session as authorized by section 551.015 of the Texas Education Code. And Mr. Cardona was going to remove everyone except the board.
So Ms. Cantu, and hopefully everybody else will agree. Everybody that's in the rooms right now does have a need to know. And I know that board members wanted to have a conversation with the principals, and we have Ms. Mustafa Chapman here. And so there's nobody that's in the room that really doesn't have a need to know as to what we need to do to support. If y'all are comfortable with that, or would you want me to remove some people?
What is the decision of the board? Is everybody okay?
Individually, I think the issue that we're about to talk about is a systemic problem, pre-K through 12. So I think
That we're okay
individually,
keeping.
they all need to be here.
Okay, let's proceed. Mr. Cardona, let's go ahead and proceed with the closed session then.
Ms. Cantu,
Yes? Ms.
I'm
Halsey?
happy to have everybody that's present present, but I'm not sure. We're not going to record the executive session, are we? That's not what we.
Mr.
No.
McLaughlin?
Yeah, so I'll be remote for the next meeting.
Oh.
But will we have the capacity to do that?
Yeah,
Cardona?
Well, I
Yeah.
think numbers wise, it's much more perilous to get together in a week, 2 weeks than it was in May or April. So I'm gonna choose to stream it from wherever, or to log on via Zoom from wherever I am for that particular meeting.
We just
We-
moved to have the whole meeting on Zoom next week.
yeah, we have that ability. We talked about it in cabinet this morning, so that's the will of the board. We're more than happy to, and then it'll still be the same time, so we'll be able to have access to the technology room so we can live stream it.
I'm
think-
good either way. If the decision of the majority of the board is to go Zoom, I'm happy to do it on Zoom.
If we decide to go virtual, I would ask that we make it 100% virtual, no in-person
No part-
option, for the
no
sake
partials.
of everyone being visible and the audio working and all of the things. And everyone will now have 2 weeks to plan accordingly to participate virtually. So if that is the will of the board, of the decision to be virtual, I would hope that we could 100% commit to a virtual
In 1
meeting.
week. It's next Monday,
1 week, okay.
in 1 week. I agree. If we're gonna do virtual, everybody be virtual. Are we good with that? Any problems? Thank you.
No, we'll be fine. I think it's my computer that I'm on right now that's causing the glitching, is what I'm realizing, because it's really working hard. So we'll have everything up and running.
Thank y'all. Okay, so then let's continue with our meeting for the agenda prep. Mr. Cardona, you were gonna put the draft up?
Yes, Mr. Fernandez has the current draft, and I'll just go through it. We'll do our item 5 superintendent's report. It will probably meet Mr. Wozniak, as we've been doing in the past, just giving a kind of a safety update, COVID update with Mr. Fernandez. I'll give up my time. And then item 6A, the academic update. We had talked about having a beginning of the year screening data presented. Some of you had asked, kind of comparing apples. It's hard to compare apples to apples right now, but kind of seeing where our kids are at, so that we could adjust as a district if we need to provide more support. So Dr. Rees Mills will be providing some information. I know Trustee Halsey and Trustee McLaughlin and Trustee Arredondo wanted an equity audit update. So Dr. Benson will be providing a virtual presentation on the scope of the first year of the equity audit, the schools, and what the tangible, measurable outcomes that we should get out of this, and what they're going to be looking at. Item 6A, the Innovative Program Initiatives Update. Ms. Dre will be presenting on kind of a continuation. She talked a little bit about Mendez and Travis, so we'll have an update on that, because there are some meetings that have been held with parents and community members that are taking place currently. Mr. Sandoval with item 6B will provide a construction update. I see Miss Halsey. It looks like she has her hand up.
I do. Could you please, could we get within that superintendent's report, could we add a 4th item to get a brief safety update, which I think would be great to include both the mental health, so like an overview of mental health initiatives and programs that we're following, especially leading into the holiday, to make people aware of hotlines, et cetera, that they can call, what resources are available. But also safety update in terms of if we have any plans for when the classes resume in January, either to do remote initially, hybrid initially, podding, whatever. If we could have a sense of that during that time, I think that would be helpful. Unless maybe the report is that we don't think that there will be anything other than what we've been doing, unless numbers on January 4th are blah, blah, blah. I just would like to know, I know that we went to pods after, in the secondaries after Thanksgiving. It sort of felt like that announcement came a little late. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do that. We can put together something as a superintendent's report. Item 7A is the approval of minutes for a regular scheduled board meeting on November 16th, 2020, and the special call board meeting on December 7th, 2020. And then item 8, items for action. Dr. Reese Mills will be presenting for your consideration and approval the targeted improvement plans that we brought up last month that are required. Dr. Reese Mills, anything else?
Yes, the targeted improvement plans are on our website in draft form, and we will just be bringing them in for final approval. We are going to also make certain that the improvement plans that are in the board book are a little bit larger to read because the font size was a little small this last time.
Item 8B, consideration and approval of the First Amendment to commercial well, let me just turn this over to Mr. Barton. Item 8B, 8C, and 8D, so he can explain kind of the logistics because he's been working with the legal team and with the city and Central.
Thank you, sir. The trustees reviewed the Centro's request for a grant proposal a few months ago, and they directed administration to go back and work on those agreements. There isn't a major substantial change to the lease other than one clause in the lease which said that any improvements that were made by Centro had to be reimbursed for as long as they were in the facility. And that's not the intention of this agreement, and we're not going to reimburse this grant money to Centro. So that is why we have to amend the lease. Then there's the tri-party agreement between the city, the school district, and Centro, which essentially says that if Centro is not able to stay in the facility for 5 years, that we will reimburse that money. Again, we are with them in that 5 years, but we cannot be with them forever to reimburse that money. Just the 5 years is the commitment. And then finally, there's an MOU that basically says exactly that. So it's a little bit confusing that it's in 3 items, but because of the nature of the clauses and where they're found, that's the guidance that we're getting from Mr. Cruz's office.
Any questions on those 3?
Nope.
Item 8E, consideration and approval of board policy FNG local update. This is a one we tabled until December, and Mr. Cruz will be ready and available to answer any questions. I know Trustee Halsey, you had some questions and concerns about this policy, so he'll be able to answer any questions. Item 8F, consideration and possible action to accept the 5 campus elementary school renovation bond projects. As you know, this is something we should have been doing that Mr. Barton put into place. And so we hope to get everything ready, and he can add anything else.
We're on track for these 2 things. A little bit of trouble right now with signatures across different organizations because of COVID procedures. So the quick turnaround to next Monday night, I know we've got the 5 campus renovation. We're working furiously on the good night one, but those projects are done. It's just a matter of closing them out and presenting them to you for approval.
And that's item 8G is consideration and possible action to accept the Goodnight Middle School renovation bond project. Item 8H, consideration and approval of year-round system designation. I'll let Ms. Dre explain that.
Yes, if you recall last our board meeting when I was explaining the 210 instructional day calendar for Mendez and Travis, one of the things that we would need to put in place, since we're not a district of innovation, is TEA's other option, which is the year-round system designation.
To my understanding, this doesn't affect the district. This is the 2 schools, but
Correct, I'm sorry. It's a system designation. It doesn't mean that we have to do anything district-wide. It's so that we can have the flexibility with our calendars, whether they're 210 or 185 or whatever. It just allows us to go beyond that 180 days. So in this case, it would specifically be serving the planning grants for Mendez and Travis.
Ms. Cantu,
Yes, Mr. Arredondo?
just as a follow-up to Ms. Dre's agenda item, if you will, just for further clarification, Ms. Dre, I know there were some concerns expressed by my colleagues about pursuing this effort. Even if this designation were to be approved by the board at our December meeting, trustees would still need to ratify school calendars in the future to allow for a calendar to reflect X number of days. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So putting this approval in place would allow us to continue with the planning. And then we'll bring the calendars to you in January for
Okay.
approval.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
I'm confused. I thought this was a longer process than you just recounted. So you're going to bring calendars in January. They're going to show some campuses going to 210.
We will bring them to you for your approval to move forward with that. So in January, part of that initial approval by the board includes our ability to continue planning based on the calendars that we will present to you.
For the 21-22 school year?
Correct.
Ms. Dre, as a follow-up, or Mr. Cardona, one of these or both of these, correct me if I'm wrong, is like contingent on a school redesign grant, correct? Or there's some effort already going on at a campus connected to some process and funds and initiatives, and this is why this is happening there at that campus.
Correct.
Am I mistaken? Okay.
Sorry. Did you finish your question? Sorry about
No,
that.
yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Just rambling.
Okay, so correct. The ADSY, the additional days of school grant, is that planning grant is in place at Travis and Mendez.
Okay.
And those funds allow us to spend this year planning to implement that. It does require board approval. We'll bring the draft plan to you, including those calendars, in January. And then we'll continue to work with community stakeholders, continue to provide you with updates and get your feedback, refine the plan. And then at the end of the school year, we will bring it back to you early in, I can't remember if it's April or May. We bring that final plan to you for approval at that time.
As we continue this conversation, Madam Board President and Mr. Superintendent, I would be interested when we talk about these initiatives, if concurrently we see like a community outreach plan as well, specifically for me, you know, how we are going to engage the community impacted by, you know, this school change at Mendez Elementary, you know, how we're going to communicate any changes to family, how we're getting stakeholder input. You know, is it virtual town halls? Is it, you know, direct mail, you know, pieces going home to families, whatever that looks like as the board makes these decisions. I would like at the forefront of those conversations, how we're communicating these processes and these efforts directly to families. So thank you.
Yes, I think that's part of the innovative program initiatives update. We'll have the planning, the grant manager, Blaine Carpenter, is that right? Present that, and so he'll have all that information.
Wonderful, thank you.
And then item 8I are the consideration and approval of the budget amendments. And Mr. Barton.
So right now there's just two. There's support for child nutrition like last month. And also we have been monitoring our budget and we have some funds set aside for professional development dedicated to early childhood education that we're not going to be able to spend as intended, but it's required spending. A little bit of that is because professional development doesn't look the same as it always has. And so we're going to shift that money into technology and buy instructional technology for those classrooms. And again, we have to spend that money on early childhood education classrooms. And so we're just going to make a switch here at mid-year, and we're going to fulfill that commitment of spending.
That's,
Ms.
Madam
Cantu,
yes.
sorry. So I have a question on the food service budget amendment for Mr. Barton et al. Right now, it's forecasted that just based on the meals that we're serving, et cetera, that it's like $250,000 deficit monthly. Is that correct?
That's the full weight of the salaries. It's pretty much $250,000 a month. To be honest, we're almost in the black when it comes to the balance of meals and salaries, except for these short months of November and December. So we had just caught back up. We got our payment for November in last week. So that's great, but we've got December salaries going out, and we're not going to have meals for that full month. So again, we're going to do a budget amendment to make sure we meet payroll in December. And then my hope and our plan is that in the spring, you're not seeing $250,000 budget amendments. It should be much smaller than that. But again, it all depends on how many kids are on campus and able to access our child nutrition program.
Okay. Well, if this isn't going to be a reoccurring expenditure on behalf of the ISD, I'll save, this exercise or conversation unless it does. But individually, I mean, if we're essentially paying folks and we're not feeding the kids, I would be interested in how we feed the kids, right? Like if that means, again, going back to like delivering meals over the holidays or asking if employees want to work or whatever that looks like. I mean, if they're getting paid to do the work, but the kids just aren't there to receive the meal or to accept the meal, especially in these shorter months, if we're spending the money anyway, I would like us to spend the money to feed the kids, but that's just me individually. And I understand if that's a logistical nightmare, then, I might be the sole voice on that issue for that reason. But again, we're paying folks to do the work. And I understand that, the work just isn't there given the short amount of time in the month of December. But we know our kids probably could still eat over the, elongated Christmas holiday. So, but anyway, that was just a thought, an aside, or,
If I can clear up one misconception there.
Yeah.
The payment to employees, it's because their salary is annualized. So
Yes.
a custodian, a child nutrition worker, they make their salary and then we divide it by 12, even though they don't work the same in every month, so that they get consistent checks.
Mhm.
So if we were to bring somebody in over Christmas break to work and provide additional meals, that would be additional salary that we would be paying, not asking them to work for the hours that they're already being paid.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
I think maybe I don't want to speak to the spirit of Mr. Arredondo's question because it was his question, but I too would be interested in if this is going to continue, and we should be able to project that by knowing what on-campus attendance is going to be and what remote attendance is going to be, that we figure out a way to reallocate staff. You should be able to have less folks at location-specific food service jobs, and then we could use the folks who were reallocated to do something remote like we did in the summer. I don't know that was it. My concern is we're wasting money and kids aren't eating, right? So that's why we're not getting the reimbursements. So I'm not saying we'll furlough staff or anything, but if we can put them to use solving the kids not eating thing, setting Christmas aside, I think that led us a different road. But when we return, I would be interested in that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The only thing I think, Mr. McLaughlin, you brought it up, but I don't exactly remember from the last board meeting, and it was at the end, so I didn't take the time to elaborate. But you did ask if we were finding efficiencies within that department, and we've gone back to the TASB survey that we did last year. We've actually identified 8 FTEs in efficiency that we have a commitment with child nutrition to fulfill. But like you said, we're not furloughing any employees. We are attritioning down to that as we have vacancies. And by the end of the year, we will be 8 people more lean than we are right now in that department. And they were all good, more efficient moves, not just because of this pandemic, but it made our department better.
Ms.
Yeah.
Mejia, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay. Ms. Hanson, Ms. Halsey?
Thanks. I have a question about a different item if we're done with that conversation. Okay, so Ms.
Go ahead
Cantu,
and ask it.
Ms. Cantu, if next Monday we have only 6 sitting trustees, will we add an item to discuss the filling of the 7th seat?
Yes, we can add an item so that we can discuss process and have a full discussion on it and at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have to, does that have to go in multiple months? I mean, can't we just process a point all at once? Or we take applications? I haven't been around when this has happened. Ms. Hanson might be able to shed light on what we've done in the past. I think she's the only one here who's been here through, well, Ms. Villapando as well.
Ms. Villapando is also able to tell us.
Right. She wasn't on my screen, but I think that, did they take applications or how does that look?
Ms. Villapando, would you like to respond to that question?
Giving Mr. Arredondo bad luck. We're putting the cart ahead of the horse, but just so we know one way
Yeah.
or
Ms. Villapando, I can't hear you.
Hear me now?
There you
Okay.
go.
Yes.
I can tell you what my experience was. Because before, when we had vacancies, the board used to just select somebody, and whoever was elected got to serve on the board until they were elected. When the time came, before the year's out, that you have to process to be elected. Okay, and in my case, they changed the system for that one, for my vacancy, the vacancy that came about when I was appointed. It wasn't an automatic appointment. The board members were asked to submit names, and then they settled on 2 names that they wanted to interview, and I was one of them. So both of us interviewed the other gentleman. They interviewed him also, and the majority of the board selected me. So that's how come. And then I had to file for election immediately before the year ended, in May. And so that's how the process was. I think that is a good process. Some board members, or maybe one more member, was upset because the board had not done what they had previously done. But I was very happy to be interviewed. I felt like I had some kind of experience that the board felt was needed that I could serve on the board.
Ms. Cantu,
If I could say real quickly, the procedures are very detailed and outlined in our board procedures.
Did they change it at that time? I'm recommending that
I don't know when it was changed, but the procedures have been outlined. And that was one thing I looked up, and we don't want to jinx it for anybody, but if this so happens, we can discuss it fully and we can have copies sent to everybody, or so that we'll all
we
be
can
looking
change
at.
it. Or if it's a procedure, we can change that procedure, because I believe that the board members have a right to select somebody that they know and are willing to support to be appointed. And then we have a right to vote on that, and the majority gets the appointment in. And then there is a procedure that when you're appointed, then you have to file for election as soon as the election comes up. And that's all I'm gonna say. Okay.
It is,
It's
it's pretty well outlined in our procedures. And I can take a snapshot of it and send it to y'all. But all of y'all have your board procedures. I had to look it up when KXAN was calling and they were asking. And I said, we would not discuss it until after December 8th.
Good enough.
when we
Alright.
know the outcome. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
On the agenda that I had, my lettering was different than the one Michael was reading from, and I think mine has an item he didn't read, which on my version says 8B, consider award of contract with demographer.
Well, we're going to be, well, I'll let Mr. Barton explain it.
We've completed the procurement process for demographer, but the cost did not rise to the level for board approval requirement. So we're just going to proceed with that. But we did go back out to RFP. We did hold the committee. We did have the rankings as proper. And so that's why there were some options that were in that range and some that weren't. And in the end, the committee did not pick that. But we had to submit those items, at least initially for this agenda prior to that decision.
Okay, thanks. I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. McLaughlin moved and Mr. Arredondo seconded. All in favor? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And opposed? 0. We've adjourned.
Everybody have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Y'all have a good one.
Y'all have a good day.
Go out and vote.
Yeah, I don't care who you vote